Hi there, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Natasha. Welcome to my channel. This video is my fourth update for my Pan Those Eyeshadows project for 2021, where I'm cycling through my eyeshadows, randomly generating 5 at a time, trying to hit pan, and as soon as I hit pan on one, I'll roll in a new one. This project was created by Alexi. She was doing it for a couple years and then she took a break and she's back. She's doing the project again this year, so I'll have her information and any other information about the project that you would need in the description box. I'm going to start by showing you the 5 eyeshadows that I have been working on in the month of April. I don't have any pans on the 5 shadows that I was working with in my quintet, but I do have a bonus pan, and also, for the first time ever, I have actually finished an entire eyeshadow. I actually panned an eyeshadow. But I'll talk about that later in the video whenever I do discuss complementary shades and bonus pans and things like that. I'm going to start by showing you the 5 shades that I was working with in April. The first one I want to talk about is a single. It's from Celeona and it's in the shade Morgana, and it's a beautiful shimmery green color. I used this an additional 6 times, which I think for such a bright, colorful shadow is pretty good, 6 times in a month. But if you remember in my last update, I imagined I would have pan on this already. I am surprised I haven't. I think I'm incredibly close. So I do hope to have a pan to share with you next month. I did create some really fun looks with this color and I'm excited to continue playing with it. But yeah, for this being such a soft shadow, I am surprised I don't have pan on it already. The next shade I want to talk about is from the Too Faced Bonbons palette. It's in the shade Almond Truffle, which is a matte, mid-toned, kind of rosy, cool-toned brown. This was my most reached for shadow over the past month. I reached for this 16 times. You are barely going to be able to see a difference in the before and after videos. I know most Too Faced eyeshadows are more tightly pressed, especially the mattes, but I was not expecting, especially considering how much I use it every time I use it, because I use it all over the crease. I'll dust it on the lower lash line. Sometimes I'll use it all over the lid, crease, and lower lash line. And there is a tiny bit of kick up whenever I use it as well, so I'm just surprised. There's so much product in there. And I have technically used it 20 times, so if I wanted to, I could roll it out, but I'm going to keep it in for another month, see if I can't make some more noticeable progress, and then update you next month whether or not I choose to roll it out, or if I want to keep it and try to hit pan. The next shade I want to talk about is from my Urban Decay Naked 3 palette, and it's in the shade Dark Side. I do feel confident in this one. I feel like you're going to be able to see a difference in the before and after videos, and it makes me optimistic that I might have pan on this next month. In the last month, I reached for it 14 times, which I think is pretty good considering it's like a very dark grayish satin shade, and it was something that I struggled to figure out how to use for a while. I mentioned in my last update, I love using this on the lower lash line, and I have been doing a lot of like grayish, cool tone purpley looks, and this shade has been perfect to maybe just add a tiny bit more depth to the outer corner, and I have also been regularly using it on the lower lash line as well. So I'm using a mix of fluffier brushes and more pointed detail brushes if I'm using it on the lower lash line. So who knows, maybe this one will have pan on it next month. The next 2 shades are shades that I rolled in last month, so they aren't going to have a ton of progress on them. The one that really doesn't have any progress at all is the one from my Juvia's Place Magic Mini palette. It's in the shade Yahida. It's a really dark matte navy blue shade. I reached for it 8 times, which is honestly more than I thought I would. I was able to find some fun ways to work with it and play with it and figure out how I can make it work. One thing to keep in mind that I like about this shadow is it can be sheared out, and you'll see in a look that I show you later on, I was able to mix it with another shimmery shade to create a really cool like blue steely look. So even though it does look super dark in the pan, it is something that can be sheared out well, but alternatively, it also takes a lot of work to build up, and I don't know if I could get that level of opacity on my eyelid without just making a humongous mess. It doesn't have a ton of fallout, but because of the color, I guess, maybe the pigments that are in this is the messiest matte shadow I've ever worked with. I'll show you a photo in the corner here. I had like maybe just a tiny speck of it on my face, or maybe I didn't even have it on my face at all. Maybe it was just like a little bit on my finger, and then when I went to wipe it off, it just smeared. It created like the biggest stain all over my face, and I couldn't just like wipe it off. I had to like remove that part of my makeup and start fresh there. So if you are going to use these types of colors, especially from this palette, I recommend doing your eye makeup first, cleaning up the fallout, cleaning up the mess, and then doing the rest of your makeup. Because this shade isn't really something I think to use all the time, and because it is a more difficult shade to work with and not create a mess. I imagine this will be a shade that I use 20 times and then roll out. It was fun to play with blues. I do appreciate having this palette. I think it's a beautiful palette, but this shade in particular just isn't my favorite. And the next one is a shade I did enjoy using a lot, and it's from my Too Faced Natural Lust palette, and it's in the shade Ball and Chain. You are going to notice a significant dip. I reached for this 14 times, and for this being a softer shimmery shade that I can wear all over the lid, use a lot of it whenever I use it, I am surprised that there isn't a bigger dip. I'm not mad at it though. It does go really nicely with a lot of the other shades from my quintet. I've also been really loving it used as a topper shade, like really sheared out on top of darker shimmery shades. And I mentioned in my last update that this is a color that doesn't really jump out at me whenever I look at the palette as a whole, but now that I am focusing on it, I am really enjoying using it. Let's talk about that bonus pan I was talking about earlier. This might not be a surprise because I mentioned in my last update that I was actively trying to hit pan on it, and that is Phantom from Makeup Geek. This is a duochrome shade. It looks more white in the pan, but it has a really pretty purple flip. I loved using this on the inner corner. This is a beautiful shade. I don't know if they make it anymore, but I'm sure lots of brands have shades like this. I just really love using shades like this on the inner corner. I don't remember off the top of my head how many uses it took to hit pan on it, but I will have that number on the screen somewhere. It took a long time. It really did, because I was just using so little of it, and it is a harder press formula. It's also pretty old, so that might have something to say about it too, but yeah, it took forever to hit pan on, but it was beautiful. I enjoyed it every step of the way. And now for the eyeshadow that I finished. You might have seen a sneak peek of it whenever I was talking about Almond Truffle from the Too Faced Bonbons palette, because it is also in this palette, and it is the shade Divinity. It's this matte bone colored, cream colored shadow here in the corner. I used it to set my eyeshadow primer. I used it to brighten up my inner corners. I used it sometimes to help blend out shades in my crease. It took me, I think, 109 uses to finish up the entire thing from start to finish. And I am surprised by that because it's a very large eyeshadow. It was 2.2 grams, which was enormous. So even though I was using a lot of it, I think the reason I was able to go through it relatively quickly, in my opinion, is because it was a super, super softly pressed shadow. It's so bizarre to me how different the formulas of the mattes in this palette can be. Almond Truffle is taking me forever to even just show any use, and Divinity was the complete opposite. I had to go out of my way to make sure I wasn't wasting product. I had to be so gentle. I had to use really soft brushes, very little pressure. I don't know why that shadow in particular was so soft and had so much fallout, but I really did try not to waste any product, and even so, it still only took 110 uses to use up 2.2 grams worth of eyeshadow. I think the last time I used up an eyeshadow was a Wet n Wild single, and I think it was in the shade Creme Brulee. It was also a matte cream shade, and that was years ago. That was whenever I first started my channel, so kind of a big deal to me, and you'll get to see how it affects my pan percentage, which I will talk about right now, a little segue. Last month in March, I had 39 pans out of 282 eyeshadows, giving me a pan percentage of 13.8%. Quite a few things have changed since then. I did bring in 2 eyeshadow palettes from ColourPop. I used up an eyeshadow, and I hit pan on another eyeshadow, which changed both sides of that fraction. So I now have 30 pans out of 305 shadows, giving me a pan percentage of 13.1%. So even though I brought in 2 eyeshadow palettes and I only hit pan on one shade, I still was able to keep my pan percentage pretty much the same, like it only went down 0.7%. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Now we can move on to the looks that I created. I created 6 looks that I want to talk about today. The first look features Morgana, the green shade, but I wanted to make it a little bit more wearable, a little less fully green. So I have Almond Truffle from Too Faced in the crease, but then I have Morgana on the outer second half of my eyelid, Dark Side on the lower lash line, and then I have Ball and Chain, which is that silvery shade, on the first half of my lid blended into Morgana. I thought this was nice. I think that green and that silver do go together really nicely. For look number 2, I was definitely going for drama. I wanted to wear that green shade all over the lid. I have it blended into the crease, and then I have Dark Side on the lower lash line, but built up so it's a little bit more dramatic. I have liner both in the upper lash line and the lower lash line. I did add Almond Truffle in the crease, but then I made a decision halfway through to make Morgana like the star of the show, so I blended that all the way up to my crease. So I'm not even sure if you can even see Almond Truffle in there. And then I used the Ball and Chain shade from Too Faced, that silvery shadow. I kind of tapped it on my fingertip, and then I used it like a topper shade just to add some dimension to the lid, but I wanted the green to really peek through, and I think it made it interesting. It was like a darker green on the outer third and then a lighter green, maybe slightly more cool toned on the first half, and I really like how that looked. I mean, it's not an everyday look for me, but I did really enjoy how it looked. So in look number 3, I wanted to use Yahide not just on the lower lash line, which is the majority of the times that I used it on the lower lash line. I have that silver shade mixed with Yahide all over the lid and on the lower lash line as well. I did add dark side a little bit on the outer third and on the lower lash line just to make it a little bit more dimensional, and I do have Almond Truffle in the crease, and I was really surprised that that is the color that came out when I mixed Yahide with that silvery shade. It made it like a very steely blue, and I really liked how that looked. I will definitely be doing that look more in the next month, maybe longer than that, depending on how long Yahide is in the project. I just really enjoyed how it lightened it up and still had that blue without being like in your face blue. I actually really liked how that looked. Look number 4 was a really simple look that I wore whenever I just didn't really have a lot of time. It's mostly Almond Truffle in the crease and then pretty much that silvery shade ball and chain all over the lid. And on my lips I'm using Bedrose from NYX, the lip pencil. Look number 5 has that Phantom shade from Makeup Geek on the inner corner, and then I do have Yahide from Juvia's Place on the lower lash line. I have Almond Truffle in the crease, dark side on the outer third, and then ball and chain on the lid. And then look number 6 only has Almond Truffle. I have that on the lid, in the crease, on the lower lash line, and then I have some eyeliner on the upper lash line and lower lash line just to add a little bit of a smudginess to it. This was a really easy everyday look. I really like how this turned out. So those are my 6 looks that I created with my quintet over the past month. I don't have any new shadows to roll in, so I don't have anything for that portion of the video that I usually do. I did want to quickly mention, I feel like I've been wanting to say it for a while and I never remember to do it, but if you are a smaller channel who is trying to hit the requirement to become monetized, I don't remember exactly what the requirements are to become monetized, but I think you need 1,000 subscribers and 4 hours of watch time. So if that is you, please let me know in the comments. I usually have something on YouTube playing in the background. It's really easy to just put on a playlist and have something going. And if you're like me and you'd like to help some other smaller content creators become monetized, please look through the comments and see who is really close to hitting that requirement, and maybe you can support them as well. And who knows, maybe in the process we'll find some hidden gems, some new favorites. But in the meantime, that's everything I have. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!